Imagine for a second that you walk into a room or, maybe you just log on to social media.
Right, which is where it usually happens these days.
Yeah, exactly. And you share something deeply important to you, like a core conviction or just this foundational belief about how you view the world.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of engaging with your actual ideas, the response you get is just loud, coordinated, public laughter.
Wow.
Not disagreement,
Yeah.
just pure contempt. And I want you to think about how your body physically reacts in that exact moment.
Oh, it's visceral. I mean, your face flushes, your heart starts racing.
Totally. Every biological instinct just screams at you
Huh.
to either run away and hide or to just lash out and attack them back.
It's completely a survival response, and honestly, it is kind of the defining relational and spiritual challenge of our whole cultural moment right now.
Yeah.
We are constantly navigating this brutal tension. Like, how do you hold firm to what is true and beautiful when the cultural default is just weaponized mockery?
Yeah.
And even more importantly, how do you endure that without letting the opposition turn you into someone who is just as bitter and hateful as your critics?
That is the exact tension we are exploring today. We're looking at a really profoundly relevant message from Pastor Florin at Agape Community Church.
Yeah, it's such a good one.
It really is. The sermon is part of a series called The Calling, Rise and Rebuild from Rebel to Renewal, which is this incredible 12-part journey through the book of Nehemiah.
Specifically, we're diving into Nehemiah chapter 4, verses 1 through 6.
Yes, but before we go any further, if you have your Bible handy, grab it and open it up.
Yeah, and the pastor specifically references the NIV translation in his notes, so follow along with that if you have it.
But really, any version will absolutely work.
Totally. And if you are in a place where you can do this, pause the audio right now, read those 6 verses, and then hit play so we can unpack it together.
Right. And if you're driving or out for a run or something and you can't pause, don't worry, we've got you covered.
We'll bring you up to speed.
Yeah. So the quick summary is this. Nehemiah and the people are rebuilding the ruined walls of Jerusalem.
Right.
And the local opposition, led by this guy named Sanballat, realizes the work is actually succeeding.
Which he hates.
He hates it. So Sanballat and his ally Tobiah, they gather a crowd and start ruthlessly mocking the builders, calling them feeble, joking that, even a fox walking on the wall would knock it down.
Yeah, real middle school bully tactics.
Seriously. But in response, Nehemiah doesn't fight them. He prays this fierce prayer, asking God to handle the enemies, and then the people just go right back to work building the wall to have its height.
It is a short passage, but the dynamic playing out in these 6 verses is incredibly intense.
It really is.
And, to fully grasp it, we should probably orient you, the listener, on how this deep dive actually fits into the bigger picture. Because this is step 3 in a really cohesive 3-part approach to communicating the Sunday message.
Let's map that out for them.
Yeah.
So step 1 is the live Sunday sermon itself.
Right.
That is shaped for the gathered church in the room. It focuses on that specific moment and, pastoral person-to-person ministry.
And then step 2 is the fuller midweek video teaching on the church's YouTube channel.
Right.
That's the space where you can slow down, go deeper into the text, pause, reflect, take notes, and really study.
Exactly. And then step 3 is what you are listening to right now, which partners with Agape's apprenticeship groups.
Yeah, this is where the message is discussed, processed in community, and ultimately applied in everyday obedience.
I just love that structure.
Yeah.
You have one biblical message, preached for the room, explored for depth, and discussed for apprenticeship.
It's a brilliant way to actually internalize the teaching, right? Rather than just consuming it and forgetting it by Tuesday.
Totally. So let's get into the mechanics of this passage. We have to start by looking at how the opposition attacks.
Yeah, the strategy.
Because the enemy's tactics in Nehemiah's day, they perfectly mirror the cultural hostility we face right now.
Oh, 100%. Sanballat doesn't start with swords. He doesn't, march an army to the gates.
Right. He starts with rage, which he immediately weaponizes into public ridicule.
The progression in the text is actually really fascinating because verse 1 says he became angry and was greatly incensed. But anger often needs an audience to feel powerful,
Oh, that's so true. It needs an audience.
Yeah. So verse 2 says he spoke, quote, in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria. He turns it into a theatrical performance. He launches these rhetorical questions like, what are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Can they bring the stones back to life?
And then Tobiah chimes in with the punchline.
Right.
He's like, even a fox climbing up on it would break down their wall of stones.
Yeah.
I read that and immediately thought this is a psychological operation.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, why start with a comedy routine instead of physical force?
Yeah.
Sanballat literally has an army right there.
He does.
But it seems like he knows that if you can make someone feel ridiculous, they'll just defeat themselves by quitting.
Exactly.
You don't even have to fight them if they just drop their tools out of embarrassment and walk away.
You call it a psychological operation, and that is incredibly accurate. The pastor's notes point out that contempt is this deliberate strategy meant to do in the soul what force cannot yet do in the street.
Wow. Say that again?
Right. It's meant to do in the soul what force cannot yet do in the street. Sanballat isn't just throwing random insults, he's weaponizing human biology.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, modern psychological research shows that shame triggers our evolutionary fear of being exiled from the tribe. When you are publicly mocked, your brain literally processes that social rejection using the exact same neural circuits as physical pain.
So it actually hurts.
It literally hurts. He is trying to cause them literal anguish to make them drop their tools.
Wait, so the isolation is actually the prerequisite for the shame to work? Like, if you're alone, the mockery is deafening. But if you're building next to someone else, it loses its power.
Exactly. And this connects directly to the strategic community assessment report that Agape conducted for their surrounding region in Waukesha County.
Right. The community research.
Yeah. The research paints a picture of a community dealing heavily with social isolation, mental fatigue, family strain, and spiritual confusion.
Yeah.
We are living in a highly fragmented, exhausted society right now.
Okay, that makes the stakes so much higher.
It does.
Because if you were already exhausted from, say, caregiver burnout, or the
Ugh.
lingering loneliness of a post-pandemic world,
Yeah, people are so tired.
your emotional reserves are already depleted. If society then turns around and tells you your core beliefs are backward or bigoted or embarrassing, the easiest, most self-protective thing to do is just stay quiet.
That is the exact mechanism of weaponized shame. The goal is to make believers feel foolish, causing them to self-censor and retreat from their calling. The enemy wants the followers of Jesus to feel ridiculous before they become dangerous. Dangerous to the darkness, that is. They want you isolated, tired, and embarrassed.
So if we step back and ask one of our core Bible study questions,
Yeah.
what does this passage reveal about humanity?
Yeah.
Becomes so clear. It reveals our deep, agonizing struggle with the fear of looking foolish.
Oh, yeah. No one wants to look stupid.
Exactly. We are so easily paralyzed by shame. The text shows us that when God's work becomes visible, rage often follows from the opposition.
Uh-huh.
And our human temptation in that moment is to measure the truth of our work by the applause we receive, rather than by our faithfulness to the task.
That is a crucial insight. We desperately want the applause, but public contempt is not proof that the work is false.
Wow.
And honestly, that brings us to the absolute hinge of this passage. Once we recognize that the psychological goal of this shame is to paralyze us, we have to look at Nehemiah's reaction.
Right.
Because his response in verses 4 and 5 is wildly instructive.
Right, he doesn't lash out at Sanballat, but he also doesn't, go hide in his tent. He redirects the conflict entirely.
He prays.
He prays.
Yeah.
But here is where we need to dig in,
Oh.
because this is not a bless my enemies and give them a good day kind of prayer.
Not at all.
He prays what theologians call an imprecationary prayer. He literally says, turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in a land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt.
It is a fierce, unvarnished cry for God to act against the opposition.
Okay, I have to push back here,
Sure.
because I know what you, the listener, might be thinking when you read those words. This sounds incredibly harsh.
It does.
People might read this and say, okay, well, that's the angry Old Testament God. But I follow Jesus, and Jesus tells us in the Sermon on the Mount to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us.
Right.
How do we reconcile this intense prayer for judgment with the grace of the New Testament? Because if we just ignore it, don't we risk becoming doormats who let abusive people walk all over us?
It's the most natural objection in the world, and it's a tension that the pastor's research notes address head-on.
Okay.
To understand this, we have to understand what an imprecatory prayer actually is. This is not about private vengeance. Nehemiah isn't nursing a petty personal grudge.
Right.
And notice what he doesn't do. He doesn't tell his builders to drop their trowels, pick up swords, and go strike back. Instead, this prayer is a covenantal appeal to a perfectly just God.
Hold on. For those of us who hear the word covenant and just think of, like, a dry legal contract, How is this different?
Mm.
Is it kind of like a citizen appealing to a judge in a courtroom rather than becoming a vigilante in the streets?
That is the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Think about it. A vigilante takes the law into their own hands because they don't trust the system.
Mm.
They are driven by anger, ego, and personal revenge.
Right.
But a citizen who appeals to a judge is saying, a crime has been committed here. The law has been broken. I am trusting you, the authority, to execute justice so I don't have to.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Nehemiah recognizes that the enemies aren't just insulting him personally. They are actively opposing the restoration work of God, and they are publicly disgracing God's people.
Yeah.
So Nehemiah hands the judgment over to the judge.
So handing it over to God is actually the mechanism that keeps us from becoming hateful.
Yes.
We let God be the judge, which means we don't have to carry the poison of vengeance in our own veins.
Precisely. And the sermon notes contrast this biblical approach with other religious or political ideologies.
Oh, like what?
Well, think about political systems rooted in violent class struggle, or religious movements that advocate for forced expansion by the sword.
Right, where you have to conquer your enemies physically.
Exactly. In those systems, retaliation is immediate, personal, and violent. If someone mocks you, you destroy them.
Yeah.
But the biblical text gives us a different way. It allows us to cry out for justice, to boldly ask God to expose lies and stop wickedness, while still refusing to let our own hearts be corrupted by personal revenge.
That reframes things beautifully. And this addresses another vital point of the notes regarding trauma-informed psychology.
Yeah.
The research points out that forgiveness and love do not require naive trust or immediate reconciliation with an abuser.
No, we don't.
You can forgive someone, refuse to take personal revenge, and still fervently pray for God to restrain their harmful actions.
It is incredibly freeing when you realize you can pray, Lord, save them, and Lord, stop them at the exact same time.
Yeah.
It isn't a contradiction.
It really isn't. And if we're asking our first study question, what does this text tell us about God?
Yeah.
It clearly says that he is a perfect judge. He does not view the mocking of his people as morally neutral. He hears our cries. He cares deeply about justice. And he actively protects his covenant community.
Absolutely. And it also clarifies what we need to turn away from in our own lives, which is question 3.
Right. What do I need to believe, obey, or turn away from?
Exactly. We need to turn away from both sentimental passivity, just being a smiling doormat, and personal vengeance. We must believe that we can hold the tension of loving our enemies personally while prayerfully asking God to restrain evil and expose what is false.
It's about maintaining moral clarity without becoming vindictive.
Yeah.
And because Nehemiah hands that ultimate justice over to God, it completely frees him and the people from the exhausting burden of revenge.
They don't have to carry it.
Right. They don't have to spend their energy plotting a counterattack, which means they can get back to work.
Yes. The prayer isn't the end of the response. It's the fuel that allows them to return to the calling.
So let's look at verse 6. It says, "So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart."
I love this verse.
I really want to sit with that for a second. The pastor's notes highlight the sheer beauty of this moment. The enemies were still out there. They were still loud.
Yeah, they didn't go away.
The cultural pressure didn't just magically disappear because Nehemiah prayed, but the wall still rose. And the quote from the notes is, "Half a wall under pressure is still holy progress."
Ah, I love that phrase so much. Half a wall under pressure is still holy progress. We usually measure success by completion,
Yeah. Like a finished wall, a perfectly wrapped up project, a culture completely transformed.
Exactly. But this is arguing that the effort itself, despite the noise, is the victory. Modern research on public humiliation shows that it almost always leads to hesitation, withdrawal, and paralysis.
Yeah, we just freeze up.
That's what makes verse 6 so striking. The people do not spiral into paralysis. They feel the fear, they hear the mockery, and they put their hands right back on the rough stone.
And so what does this mean for us today? Like, how do we build our wall?
Well, this is where following Jesus becomes an active apprenticeship, not just passive belief.
Yeah. The concept of apprenticeship is crucial here. Jesus didn't just call us to agree with a set of theological facts and then, sit quietly until heaven. He called us to apprentice under him in real life. We see this in Matthew 6:33, where Jesus says to seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. Followers of Jesus are adopted into the family, the nation, and the kingdom of God. And a kingdom isn't just a metaphor. It has a real identity, a real heritage, and a real culture.
It's not just a theoretical concept or a Sunday hobby. Seeking the kingdom means everything we think, say, and do is built on that priority.
Exactly.
So in Agape's specific context in Pewarki, their strategic ministry report shows exactly what putting hands back on the wall looks like in real life.
What does that look like?
It means practically engaging the culture to expand God's kingdom through real relational community. It means supporting those caregivers we talked about earlier who are burning out.
Yeah.
It means reaching out to the isolated and the lonely. It means creating a truly safe, authentic space for the spiritually curious who are wary of institutional religion but are desperate for connection.
That is the work. That is the physical building of the wall.
Yeah.
And when the weapon of shame is pointed at the church, trying to tell believers that their faith is irrelevant or bigoted or foolish, the response cannot be to retreat from that community work.
No, it can't.
The response is to pray, hand the justice to God, and then keep caring for the isolated, keep serving the families, keep telling the truth.
And this gives us such a profound example to hold on to answering that fourth study question. When shame is weaponized against you, your response must be prayer and steady work.
Yes.
Do not let the mockery of critics define the worth of the work God has given you. You keep your hands on the ministry right in front of you.
That combination, prayer and steady work, is the ultimate antidote to the paralysis the enemy wants to cause.
Exactly.
You don't have to wait for the opposition to stop before you start building again. You build while they shout.
You build while they shout. I love that.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we have to move from theory to action. This brings us to question 5. Who can you talk with or pray for in light of what we've unpacked today?
Yeah, that's the most important part.
We really encourage you to bring this specific question to your Agape apprenticeship group this week. But even right now, as you listen, just kind of scan through your mental Rolodex.
Who comes to mind?
Look for someone in your life who might be withdrawing. Maybe you've noticed a friend backing away from their faith or stepping down from serving because of cultural pressure or the heavy weight of isolation.
We all know someone in that spot right now.
We do. Be a peaceful, prayerful presence for them this week. Send them a text. Grab coffee with them. Remind them that half a wall under pressure is still holy progress.
And before we close, we want to briefly mention that the content and development of this deep dive have been assisted by AI and fully reviewed by Pastor Florin.
Right, to ensure it perfectly aligns with the church's biblical foundations.
Exactly. And you can find out much more about those foundations along with additional tools for the journey by visiting agapechurch.life.
We are so incredibly grateful for you. Thank you for making the time to listen, to study, and to actively participate in this shared journey. Whether you are brand new to exploring Christianity or you've been following Jesus for decades, you are deeply valued, and your presence in this community truly matters.
It really does. Because it takes courage to build in this culture.
It does. We started today by talking about the visceral, paralyzing fear of public contempt. How things can feel so murky and hostile when the weapon of shame is pointed at your convictions.
Yeah.
As you step back into that culture today, we will leave you with one final lingering question based on Pastor Florin's notes for you to mull over.
What specific work has God placed in front of you that the weapon of shame has been trying to silence?
And what would it look like for you to put your hands back on that wall today?